What are combinators, and how do they work with our basic selectors such as the type, class, ID, and attribute selectors? Combinators are symbols that we place between our basic selectors. They work together with the basic selectors to make new selectors that can take into account the position of an element in the tree of our HTML document. There's 4 different combinators, and we'll try all of them in this lesson. The right arrow character is called the child combinator, and I think it's the easiest to understand, so that's why we're starting with it. The child combinator will allow us to select elements that are direct children of another element. Switch over to Replit, and let's try it out. Go ahead and make a new REPL. Like usual, you can name it whatever you want, but I'm going to name mine Combinators. Once it loads, delete the script.js file. Then delete everything inside the style.css file and the index.html file. Press the Run button, and you'll see a blank page in the preview window. Now what? What's the first part of any HTML document? Hopefully you remember from the previous lesson, it's the doc type preamble. Go ahead and add that now. It will be a left arrow, an exclamation point, the word doc type in all uppercase, a space, the word HTML in all lowercase, and then a right arrow. What else is required in our HTML document? The HTML element. It's our root level element. Go ahead and make that now. Inside of the HTML element, there are 2 more required elements, and they must be in a specific order. Do you remember what they are? The head element and the body element. Go ahead and make those now. That's it for the required elements. Now we want to test out the child combinator. Go ahead and make a main element inside the body, and then make a paragraph element inside the main element. For the text of the paragraph element, go ahead and write, "This is a child of the main element." Now back outside of the main element, make a footer element underneath it. Inside the footer, put another paragraph element with the text, "This is a child of the footer element." Next, hit the Run button, and we should see the text appear in the preview window. Now flip over to our CSS file, and let's try out the child combinator. Our child combinator is a right arrow symbol, and it needs to go in between 2 selectors. Let's use the type selectors for this example. In this case, it will be main, then a right arrow, and then P for the paragraph element. After that, let's add curly brackets. Then inside of those curly brackets, we can write our CSS declaration. I'm going to keep using the color property until we learn a bunch more properties in later lessons. Go ahead and write out color, blue, and finish it with a semicolon. Hit the Run button and see what happens. It doesn't work. What did we forget? The link element, which links our style sheet to our HTML document. Let's add that now. Okay, hit the Run button again, and let's see what happens. Our first paragraph is styled, but the second paragraph is not. That's because our combinator took 2 basic selectors and combined them into 1 new selector. This selector says to style a paragraph element only when it's a child of a main element, and our second paragraph is not a child of a main element. It's a child of the footer element, so the style does not apply to it. Pretty cool, right? This method of combining different basic selectors with combinators will be super useful throughout the course. Now let's check out some of the other combinators. The space character is the descendant combinator, and it will allow us to select elements that are descendants of another element. There are no limits on how many levels down this combinator can go in our HTML tree. Flip on over to Replit again, and let's try it out. Continuing with the code from the previous example, go ahead and add a div inside of our main element. Then move the paragraph element inside of that. Now we have a main element whose child is a div element, and a div element whose child is a paragraph element. Press the Run button and see what happens. Our styles stopped applying. Why is that? Flip over to our CSS file, and we'll see why. Our current CSS rule is using the child combinator. It's explicitly matching a main element with a child that is a paragraph element. But we don't have that anymore. Currently, the div is the child of our main element. The paragraph element is now the grandchild of the main element. Or we could also say that the paragraph element is the descendant of the main element. So this is a perfect opportunity to try out the descendant combinator, don't you think? Go ahead and delete the child combinator and one of the spaces in the selector of the CSS rule. We should only have main, and then a space, and then P remaining. That space in between them acts as the descendant combinator. So our new rule now says, if we have a main element, go ahead and style any paragraph elements inside of it, no matter how many levels down they are in the HTML tree. Press the Run button and let's see this work. Cool. And to prove to you that this works multiple levels down, add another div around the paragraph element. Now it's nested inside of two divs within the main element. Hit the Run button again and we'll see that it still works. Now on to the next combinator. The plus character is known as the adjacent sibling combinator. It will allow us to select elements that are direct siblings of each other, meaning that there are no other siblings in between them. I think it will make more sense to you with practice, so head on over to Replit and let's try it out. In our footer element, go ahead and add two address elements after the paragraph element. You can write whatever text you want inside of them. I'm going to write Los Angeles, California in the first one, and New York, New York in the second one. Press the Run button so that we see them in the preview window. Now flip over to your CSS file and we'll try out the adjacent sibling combinator. Make a new rule with the text P for the type selector of the paragraph element, then a plus symbol, then address for the address element. We'll put our curly brackets after that and set the color to green. That will be the CSS color property, then a colon, then green, and then finish it with a semicolon. Press the Run button and notice what happens. Only one of the address elements is green. The adjacent sibling combinator only works when the elements are directly next to each other in our HTML tree. So the second address does not get styled. Let's move on to our final combinator. The tilde character looks like a squiggly line and is known as the general sibling combinator. It will allow us to select elements that are siblings even if there are other siblings in between them, unlike the adjacent sibling combinator. Let's try it in Replit. After the address elements in our footer, add an anchor element with the text "Go to Google." For the href attribute, I think you can guess what value we'll use. https://google.com. Hit the Run button and we should see a link appear on the page beneath our address. Now let's try styling this link with the general sibling combinator. Go ahead and flip over to your CSS file. Beneath all of our other styles, write a P, then a tilde symbol, then an A for the anchor element. After that, add our curly brackets, and inside of there, let's use the color property again. Color, colon, yellow, and finish it with a semicolon. Hit the Run button, and you can see that our anchor element is now yellow, even though it's not directly adjacent to the paragraph element in our HTML tree. The general sibling combinator works just fine even if there are other siblings in between them. We can also flip back over to the HTML and add one more anchor element to prove that it works for more than one element at the same time. Add an anchor element with the text "Go to Facebook" and then use https://facebook.com as the value of the href attribute. Press the Run button and we can see that both links are now yellow. The last thing I want to mention is that the general sibling combinator and the adjacent sibling combinator only work in one direction. What do I mean by that? Move the second anchor element before the paragraph element and you'll see what I mean. Press the Run button after you've moved the link and we'll see that it is no longer yellow. Both of those combinators only work in the order that the selectors appear. So if your paragraph type selector comes first in the CSS rule, then the paragraph element also needs to come first in the code before the anchor element. Order is important in this case. Alright, that's it for combinators. On to the next lesson.